Good morning. Welcome to the June 6th, 2018 regular meeting of the Policy Board of the Directors of the Monterey Bay Community Power. It's now 9:10, just about 9:10, and I'd like to ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair. Board of Director Brown. Here. Kaufman Gomez. Present. Termini.
Here.
Parker. Hoffa. Here. Director Delgado is currently absent. Orozco. Here. Munzer. Here. Friend.
Present.
Vice Chair McShane is currently absent, and Chair McPherson.
Here. Now we will go to the next item on the agenda for public comment on items. Would the public have any comment on items that are not listed on the agenda? Anybody have any? Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Smith. I'm with Energy Systems International in Monterey. We develop integrated solar and wind energy projects. And I've noticed in many of the documents and presentations that I've seen here, there's a strong emphasis on solar energy, and I would just like to suggest that you consider more of the substantial wind energy resources in the Tri-Counties area. I think that would help reduce the need for storage batteries, because wind energy, as you know, is usually stronger at night, where we have solar energy during the day. So I think that it would be interesting to explore further the opportunities for wind energy in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Michael Saint with Citizens Climate Lobby, as well as a Campaign for Sensible Transportation. I had a preparation here, and basically I think today I'm just going to kind of wing it a little bit. I want to appreciate everybody's help and all the hard work that's gone into this CCE. Basically my goal or advocacy work primarily goes to low-income individuals as well as families, and I think Monterey Bay Community Power has a great opportunity at this time with the rebates as well as incentive programs to emphasize that goal. I personally have tried to help other low-income people, elderly people, to make their homes more efficient. I think if we were to take an infrared picture of our counties and looked at our buildings, you would see a lot of red coming out of these buildings, especially the older homes, especially those of low-income people, because they cannot afford to improve their homes. This lady I helped, I walked into her house. She was income of about $900 a month. PG&E bill was $400 a month. So she didn't have a whole lot to work with. I walked into her house and was shocked. It was 1,000 square feet. She has no washer dryer, she has no dishwasher, takes showers sparingly, and she just basically sits in her home with a $400 PG&E bill and is wrapped in a blanket and wears coats during the winter. The home's totally leaking electricity in kilowatts, and I think if we can start what I call a trickle up in this county situation versus a trickle down, it would be much more realized and good money spent. If you're going to put up solar panels on homes and buildings, if they're leaking energy, you're going to waste money on putting panels up. So basically what I had to do with her was to insulate her home. The doors was actually cracking, so they all had to be caulked. She had a hot water leak. Her bill of water was $135 a month, and she wasn't even using water specifically. It was just leaking out of the faucet. She cannot afford a plumber. She called Soquel Water District. They came over and told her the problems, gave her a $50 certificate and said, go get yourself a plumber. Well, $50 is pretty much just showing up for the job. So I think we should be more involved in that, and also to make more effort that this rebate program gets down to the bottom 1/3 of these people that are in low income. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, anybody else would like to talk to us about anything that's not on the agenda? Okay, I would like to announce that Vice Chair McShane has arrived. So we have an addition to the quorum. We will now we're about ready to go into public session, but I would like to see if anybody from the public have any comments on issues that are to be discussed, the public employee performance evaluation of the chief executive officer. Is there anybody that would like to comment on that before we go into closed session? That was advertised, and everybody knows we're going to be going into closed session before we get to the regular agenda. Okay, no comments? Okay, we will now go into closed session, and I'm not sure how long that will take. I would guess it's going to be at least a half an hour. At least a half an hour. So we'll be going in the back. We'll just recess and go into closed session. Okay, we'll reconvene the June 6th meeting of the Monterey Bay Community Power Board of Directors, the Policy Board of Directors. We have returned from closed session, and I'll ask the legal counsel, is there anything reportable?
No, there is nothing reportable at a closed session.
Thank you. We can move on to item number, let's see. Excuse me. For the open session, to consider any late additions or deletions to the consent agenda. Is there anything that we needed to have added? No, we're okay there. Board member disqualifications on any issue? I do not think there is any. We'll move to the consent agenda, items number 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. They are minutes of June 14th, July 12th, August 16th, and April 18th of the first three of 2017, and these of 2018, and then the treasury report. That was an information-only report. Any board member have any issues on that? Yes, Mr. Parker, Ms. Parker.
Thank you. I see that there's mention in the directors present and absent, someone named Rubio, and I just can't remember. I don't remember those meetings, because it was a long time ago, but I just couldn't think who that was.
Director Parker, Director Rubio was an alternate, I believe.
And was either present or absent.
Yes.
Okay, I was like, and then on August, is it 18th?
April 18th, 2018, or?
Yes, April 18th, I'm sorry. And those, it's just that it was a little bit of a long meeting, but it said that it adjourned at 12:07 a.m., probably p.m.
Thank you.
It's a small thing. Sorry, I could have just,
I'll fix that.
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Any other comments from the board on consent item? Any comments from the public on our consent item agenda? Entertain a motion?
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. We will now go to the item number 13, the CEO's report. Mr. Hibashi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start with the standard start for the new employee introduction. We've got 3 employees that will be joining us, 2 in June and 1 in July. First one that will be coming in, it's going to be next Monday. That's Brett Siriani, and you can read the bio of Mr. Siriani in your packet. He's going to be our IT manager. And a day after that, J.R. Kelligrew, or James R. Kelligrew, he's going to join as the Director of Communication and External Affairs. We have pretty much all the staff for that group assembled, and now we just need the director, and he is coming to us from MCE. He's been working with MCE for some time, and he'll be, again, starting on Tuesday of next week. Finally, we bring in Dennis Deschonil. He's coming in from Silicon Valley Clean Energy. I know him well because I did hire him back when I was with that agency. He spent quite a few years with PG&E, and he's been with Silicon Valley Clean Energy for about a year and a half. He tells me that he's incredibly excited about coming to join us, but I think he's more excited about not having to drive Highway 17 to get to work. Yeah. But I'm really glad that we're going to be able to bring him in. A Few other things that I'd like to report on. One is a joint power agreement that existing CCAs or community choice agencies are thinking about forming in order to do joint acquisition, more specifically of resource adequacy, which we'll talk about a little later, and also of acquiring long-term PPAs or project participation agreement and creating some economies of scale that will help reduce the cost excuse me, of long-term arrangements. Angela worked on that JPA draft, and we shared it with the group the day before yesterday on Monday. I would say probably we got, apologize, we got about a 90% approval rating for moving on with that JPA. The next will be a lot of crossing T's and dotting I's between all the lawyers of our lawyers as well as the lawyers of all the other JPAs or CCAs. Then eventually, when it's in a shape that we can bring it to you for approval, we will do that. Most likely, that's going to happen in September. That agency, in and of itself, doesn't do much, but eventually what it will do is create projects that we all can participate in, and to the extent that we do want to participate in those projects, whether that to be joint acquisition of resource adequacy or joint long-term arrangements or any other projects, then these projects will be brought back to the governing boards of each CCA for approval. And again, I'll report on that the next time we get together, and that's most likely is going to be in September. One more thing to report on here is, if you recall, the San Luis Obispo, the city of San Luis Obispo, been thinking about doing their own CCA. They've now joined with Morro Bay to try to do that, and they want to form their own CCA, but they don't want to have to do all the work that is being done by our staff today. They've been asking us and a couple of other interested parties if we can be the ones that will provide that service, be their staff, so to speak. In return, of course, we will get compensation that will go into contributing to our bottom line or to contribute to our fixed cost. We put an indicative offer to them on Monday. We may be invited to meet with them on the 19th of June. To the extent that they choose to negotiate with us, then we'll put together an agreement, bring it back to you for approval, and go from there. The least we're going to do, of course, is to try to make sure that we recover our cost plus, and to help them get on a solid start. Resource adequacy, which I said I'm going to report on, is the capacity that we need to buy that cover the peak consumption in any given month for our CCA. Every CCA have to do the same thing. Every load-serving entity have to do the same thing. You buy that capacity, and it's just for liability purposes only. It's not an energy thing. It's not something that you're going to deliver to customers. It is just something to assure California that we are contributing to reliability of the grid. This year, it's becoming very scarce because a lot of units are being taken off the market, being decommissioned, a lot of natural gas-fired units, and that's pretty much where all that resource adequacy comes from. And because of that, we had to pay a lot more than what we expected to pay, what we anticipated to pay, and that's going to eventually show up in our bottom line. It's not a huge dent, but nevertheless, it is becoming an issue. And this is one of the things that we are looking to work with the other CCAs on joint acquisition of. This way we can reduce our cost. When we buy individually, we tend to kind of compete for what's available, and that generally drives up the price. If we buy as a single unit, that may help us become the price maker, so to speak, in that market. And in that regard, and it's something that's not on in your packet, we have just a couple of days ago, PG&E put out their expected forecast for the rates coming January of 2019, as well as the PCIA, which you all know about by now. and both forecasts seems to be squeezing us. So we're going to probably get hit twice to the extent that they get what they want. They want to reduce the rate for the supply side, and they want to increase the PCIA. So we will have to reduce our rates to match. Then because of the PCIA going up, we'll have to reduce our rates even further in order to make sure that the full cost for the customer will always stay below PG&E. The forecast that they put out, it could have as big of an impact on us as 15 to 20%. Most likely will be corrected and adjusted by September and again in November. And it doesn't become final until December 31st of 2018. We will obviously follow up on all that and update our forecast, our financial forecast along the way. We still have a good cushion, but some of that is likely to be taken away, and we'll see how it goes.
The main point will be rates equal to or lower than PG&E
Always.
in the long run.
Yes. Customer notifications are out. We already got the first patch for all the residential customers. In June, we will be sending out the second notification, so you should all expect to get one more notice before you are in. Comes July, I intend to look at each one of your homes to make sure that you are in and didn't opt out. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll conclude my remarks.
Okay, any questions from the board? Yes, Mr. McShane.
Yeah, sure. The interest on the part of SLO and Morro Bay. You know, just last night at our council meeting, our mayor, Delray Oaks, had pitched in. I just thought I would ask, have you heard from either of the other two cities have signaled they're going to pursue their own CCA there, and if in our own backyard they may wish to for our services?
I know that King City is started to pursue their own way, so to speak, right after they basically rejected being part of this agency. So I don't know about Delray Oaks. I think Delray Oaks is still open to us going to them and see if we can bring them in. King City's approach is one of the 4 or 5 models out there that CCAs are formed in accordance to. King City is doing their own thing, working with a private company, which will be the first time. Generally, the ones that work with another company, instead of hiring their own staff, they tend to work with a company that is public agency like SMUD or TEA. This one, they're going to be working with a private company with the understanding, I believe, the model for them is the company takes over, they run the operation from A to Z, they do everything, then they give the city either a % of the net revenue or just a fixed amount of dollars, and basically the city is out of the decision-making process. I can't swear to it, but I think that's the model and the approach that third party, that private company is taking, and they've been pitching that model to a lot of other cities in up and down California, and I think King City is the only one that took it.
On the Super JPA, how big of the CCA community move in that direction?
All the other 15 CCAs in operation, I believe maybe about 12 or 13 of them were some were were there in person, others were on the phone, with the exception of 2 of them. Everybody else welcomed the idea and all want to be part of it.
Questions? Yes.
My concern is with the mail-outs. Maybe it's just because San Benito County's got slow mail, I'm not sure, but I'm getting a lot of people asking me when they're going to get those cards. I personally have not seen them either. So if we're having our next mail-out in July, or this month in June, people haven't seen it yet. So
I know at least a couple of staff members I have here, their ears just perked because they're responsible for making sure that everybody gets that notification. So I'll check with them after this meeting and see what the delay is. But everybody in May should have the first notification. A second notification should be in June, so I'll check on it and get back to you.
Okay,
Ray?
thank you. 'Cause I didn't see anything.
I got mine yesterday.
Yeah, I got mine last week.
Any other questions from the board? Any other items that you wanted to bring up, Mr. Kobashi?
No, I got a couple, Mr. Chairman.
Pardon me? That's done? Okay. I don't think that needs to be addressed by anybody from the public.
My apologies. I think we just put something on the board just to very quickly to point out the opt-outs so far. This is the opt-out report by numbers and by total kilowatt hour or gigawatt hours. So as you can see, and this is the total gigawatt hours opt-out so far. As of 5/24, we're up to total of 445 residential customers. All 260, roughly 260 or 240,000 residential customers have been notified. So we got 445 opt-outs so far.
Very good.
Less than 1/10 of, well,
Less
maybe
than
2/10 of 1%, something like
2/10
that.
of 1%. Good. Great. Okay. Any other information then?
I believe that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I don't know if the public would have any comment on that. It's probably just a discussion item. Any comments from the public? We'll move to item number 14, the Operations Board report presented by Chair Mendez. Thank you for being here and for your efforts.
Sure. Thank you, Renee Mendez, Operation Board's Chair. Just very briefly, the Operation Board meets more frequently than you do, and we kind of serve as a technical committee, if you will. So what we've done up to this point in the report is we did approve the dues for us to belong to Cal CCA, which is very consistent with what we do with our local cities and counties and so forth. We belong to other large organizations to get economies of scale and have strength in numbers. We also took action on approving some financial and information technical IT policies and procedures, which we all have back at our own local shops as well. As you know, we're a startup, so we're just beginning to sort of put all the policies, procedures, and things that we need to do to make sure that the organization has the tools that it needs moving forward, and also has the ability to have checks and balances in what we do. So I know I could provide you more information, or staff as well. There was a lot of discussion about the offsite meeting locations. We are a 3-county JPA, and sometimes it's very difficult for the different parts of the county to get to the meetings, so there was a lot of discussion about that. Certainly, we want to do something like that that's also practical, because from staff's perspective, it takes a lot to set up meetings in multiple locations and make sure that the noticing, the IT, the phones and everything sort of work. So we did direct staff to bring back a report on the feasibility of using 2 off-site meeting locations, essentially the Monterey site and somewhere in this area. Formation and structure of the Community Advisory Council. We've heard loud and clear, obviously, from the Policy Board and from the public. This is a very important aspect of what we're doing. So we provided direction on that. There was also a conversation about stressing sort of ethics training. We all do it every couple of years, and a lot of our committees do as well. So there was a discussion about that. Also, to kind of handle the opt-out and to try to minimize that as much as possible and to fit our programs to the needs of our customers or potential customers, we did discuss a lot and gave direction on having a flexible approach to serving our largest our large customers. There's clearly the technical aspect of that, but there's also, I think, sort of a comfort. We're a new organization. What does this really mean? How is this really going to affect our bottom line? So I think providing our staff and our executive director the tools, the flexible tools to be able to structure programs to serve our large customers is something we felt was very important, and obviously recommending to you. Another sort of nuts and bolts discussion that we have is just the employee handbook. How do we, insurance benefits, and what sort of culture and benefits do we want to provide our employees? So there was a lot of discussion about that. Again, very similar to what we do back at our local shops. We've seen, I think all of us have seen an incredible need for counsel and legal. This is really new to a lot of us, and as we're moving forward, we have excellent counsel, but we feel that the staff sort of feels that a little bit more is needed in that area, so that the operations board discussed giving Mr. Habashi the flexibility to try to figure out a way to meet that need. And one of our Capitola City Manager Director, Goldstein, recommended that sort of we assist in sort of that evaluation that will ultimately be brought to you as a recommendation. Sort of another nuts and bolts on the energy side, execution of a master power purchase and sales agreement and confirmation letters. So the core business of our agency, that was put forward. And then finally, I think this is something a little exciting that we're starting to now get into kind of a local benefit from the power of this agency. So we did authorize requests for offers for local renewable generation and energy storage projects. So I think we're now trying to reach out to the community in our area and, what can you do? How can we benefit? This is a start. It's a start, but I think it's a good start in the first year of an agency. So that's my report. I'll be happy to provide you any information or questions, and I'm sure staff can help me answer some of those questions as well.
Thank you very much for your work. It's invaluable for us on the policy board. Are there any questions from the board? Mr. Hoffa.
Could you clarify? Explain a little bit more what that meant.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Mr. Habashi to help me out.
Glad to. We put on an RFO that for up to 20 megawatts of systems of 1 to 3 megawatts, and we keeping the door open for the providers or the developers of those systems to either build a solar system. I don't think they can do a whole lot of wind in Monterey County or Santa Cruz County, but it mostly is going to be solar systems, or if they so choose, they can make it solar plus storage, so battery storage that will go with the solar. This way you can store the energy during the day when energy is very cheap, and release it when the sun goes down or before it comes up in the morning.
Thank you.
Questions from board members? Thank you for your presentation. I might just ask the public if they had any comments on the report from the Operations Board. Thank you very much, Mr. Mendez. We will now move to item number 15, to consider the ad hoc committee's recommendation on performance goals for the CEO. To discuss those goals, and Mr. Mendez will be here. I would like to mention that Jamie Goldstein, the city manager of Capitola, was also very much involved in this. Thank you.
Yeah, Chairperson, board members, and also your policy board members, Parker and Friend, were also part of the ad hoc committee that was set. Just very briefly, we were charged with figuring out a way to set up some short-term goals as well as some metrics to tie to those goals. We really had a lot of great discussion on trying to set something that was meaningful, easily measurable, but it was not too cumbersome. So, speaking as city manager, when I get 150 goals, that becomes a little overwhelming. So we were trying to figure out how to make it sort of more practical. So what you have before you is, I think, 6 separate goals. Successfully launch commercial and residential service on schedule. So that's sort of the core business. Since we're a startup agency, ensure fiscal stability, ensure operational stability, so not only from the financial side, but also sort of the core organizational side, ensure excellent communication with the Public Policy and Operations Board. And I might say this was, a lot of the charge that the committee was given was obviously from the Policy Board and discussions that you have had. So we were trying to fit all that together, as well as meeting with Mr. Habashi. Another goal that was set was develop innovative and industry-leading programs relevant to our Tri-County region. So what fits us? What would work better for us? And then the sixth one was regional partnerships and advocacy. So those were the 6 goals set. Then the metrics. Part of the successfully launching commercial residential service on schedules. An example, a metrics opt-out rate of 4% or less. So that's the target that we're kind of setting for Mr. Habashi. That's being recommended to the full policy board. I can get more into the metrics, but the idea was to try to find metrics that successfully capture those goals. Another example of a goal and a metric, which has been discussed a lot, was with ensure excellent communication with the Public and Policy and Operations Board. So one of the metrics was develop comprehensive outreach and communication plan for board consideration, policy board consideration by August 1st, 2018. So that was just an example of a metric that would meet that goal. So I'll be happy to provide them information. I'm sure the other 2 ad hoc committee members will.
And I think these, there's copies of this in the back of the room. Any comments from the board? Ms. Kaufman-Gomez.
Yes, I commend all of the committee that put this together and really worked in consensus with a lot of the different ideas and the different formats that management styles use. I know that our CEO here has a lot more check the boxes and, the analytical side of things, and there's others that are a little bit more, free form kind of policy in terms of how they do their evaluation process. So I think that it was a good mesh to come together with something that the CEO knows how to work with on structure to be able to achieve what this list looks like, as well as us to be able to measure it and put everything in there that we're looking at for setting goals for the agency.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McShane?
Yeah, maybe just a comment or two. I know we had a good discussion, and indeed, many of these goals are more subjective than objective, which can sometimes be a challenge. But I really feel that though there's a lot to this, it is achievable. And I think there was also some discussion as to long-term goals, which the agreement was we would look at those as this set of short-term or nearer short-term goals come to some closure. It's also worth noting that we also discussed that the chair would work with the County of Santa Cruz in developing a tool that would be used in the evaluation. I think that there was consensus there, and that we'll also share any potential ideas we have for evaluation tools, and that it's important that all be established sooner than later, that we don't wait until the very end of, this current period for evaluation. But, yeah, I also share in Ms. Kaufman-Gomez's comments that these are really well put together, and I thought that the committee went and did a good job with this. I'd also say it's worth commenting that it seems like, Mr. Habashi is in agreement with what's here. So that's a real important component as well. That's all.
Any other comments from the board? Comments from the public? Okay, then I think we'll, this is an action item. Would entertain a motion to, motion and a second to accept the ad hoc committee's recommendations on performance goals for the CAO. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. We will go now to item number 16, adopt a resolution changing the time and location of the regular meetings of the Policy Board of Directors. Mr. Bashi, did you, or?
Can I ask Brendan if she can speak to it?
Basically, what we're doing is looking at adopting a resolution, since we have moved our operations over to the Monterey Bay location at 70 Garden Court, Suite 300, to change that location from the last resolution that was adopted, as well as changing the time from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. to allow for individuals to be able to get over to our location without any traffic concerns or other concerns.
Okay. All right. Any comments from the board on this? These are to move the regular meetings to the headquarters of the Monterey Bay Community Power on Garden Court in Monterey, starting at 10:30 a.m. The dates that have been set for those who don't have an agenda, it's March 7th, June 6th, September 12th, and December 5th of next year. Any comments from the board then? Any other comments? Comments from the public? Entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Moved and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Okay, now we will go to item number 17, to approve a replacement of the Monterey Bay Community Power General Counsel contract position with a full-time employee position. Mr. Bashi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we started this agency, we did it exactly the way almost all other CCAs have started, and probably every other agency out there started with just the work of the members, staff of the members, as well as outside consultants. And when you brought me in September of last year, I came in and replaced a couple of people to some extent, and slowly we began hiring staff on a full-time basis. And as we did, consultants were doing less and less work for us. We still kept many of them, but many of them now have a much smaller contract than they used to have with us in the past few months. I think all the areas that all the three areas that we have now, which is power supply contracts or power supply area, the internal operation area, the finance, IT and human resources, as well as the communication and public affairs. All those now we pretty much all staffed up, and we're about to get directors to cover the other two areas. The one area that we have not, that we're still working with contracts, is the legal counsel, and with the support that they will get from regulatory as well as legislative analysts. Initially, Dana was terrific, worked with us all the way until I believe January of this year. Since then, we've got Angela, and she's been doing a terrific job for us so far, and I'm certainly hoping that she'll be working with us in the future as outside consultants. But we are at a point now where I feel that we need to bring in-house legal counsel and have that person perhaps hire the regulatory as well as the legislative support that they need. So far, we have been obviously to handle these meetings and to also work on a number of contracts that we needed. Angela has done a terrific job for us. She's been working a lot, and I know she put in a lot of hours of her own time in order to get work done for us. But the two areas that we still have to hire outside legal contracts in order to support us is in the negotiations of power supply contracts, the utility scale one, as well as all the work that we're doing on the regulatory side. We're still paying for that. And in some cases, relying on the kindness of strangers, basically relying on a lot of other CCAs to use their staff in order to file briefings and do what's necessary with the CPUC and the CEC, and we just basically very quickly scan it and say, yeah, that's fine. I think we need to have our own voice in that area as well. So this request is basically saying that since inception, we've relied on outside contracts for legal support. We would like to make that to be a permanent position. A number of other CCAs have that, some don't. But I think given the span that we have here with the two boards and the incoming council, as well as all the work that's been done now on the legal as well as the legislative front, I think we could use a full-time legal counsel. So that's what the request is for, and I'll stop here.
Okay, thank you. Dana and McRae and Angela have been fantastic. I think the impact on the budget, it wouldn't have a tremendous impact. Well, it depends on what the negotiated salary is for this person, but in general, it should it have any kind of what kind of an impact should it have on the budget?
It really, I thought it would save us money, but when I looked at it again, I'm going, probably not yet. So far, I believe, since October 1st, the last number that I looked at, and this, by the way, includes the work that Angela, as well as Dana and Steve Hall, who's supporting us on negotiations for the power supply contracts, and some of, not including the money that we pay in CalCCA for the legal support that they are doing there. I think we spent roughly about $186,000, if I remember correctly, and I know. Here you go. Tiffany's right there behind me. So we spend that much money on legal support. Not all of it, small portion on Angela. Yeah, I don't lay it all on her. A good portion of it went for the power supply contract support, which, by the way, we hired back in October of last year. 5 months before we hired Angela, and Steve has been helping us all along on all the agreements, all 54. By the way, we have so far signed 54 enabling agreements plus confirmation agreements with different suppliers for different pieces of products that we needed to buy at one point or another. This is just related to power supply function. There was another 28 agreements that Angela and Dana helped us on, which all are internal agreements that we had to sign at one point or another.
Going to be close with.
I would say break even. I wouldn't want to go beyond that because I don't know what the need eventually will be. For example, as we move forward, and if we bring in somebody that didn't do much on the JPA work, we're going to bring Angela to help us on all the work that we're doing with the CCA folks on that super JPA that we're talking about. So there may be a need later on to bring in outside support.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Yes.
How many of the something most of them have, or how many of them have their own in-house attorney?
I know of 3 of them. There, I would say about 8 of the 15 that are in operation are very small. Many of them are cities, so they use their city's legal counsel to support them on that, which, by the way, is another option that we have, to the extent that if we don't end up finding the right person for this position, obviously we can continue the way we are, which is working, or we can continue, or we can tap into one of the counties, because both counties are offering now their attorneys to support us. I know the County of Monterey support something like 20 different joint action agencies out there, and they already called me up and said we will be willing to have one of our lawyers come and sit in your office and put 20 hours a week to the extent that we're willing to pay the billable hours. And so that's another offer that we have. I would like to examine all those offers, but I'd like to also have that option of being able to bring in an in-house attorney. So when we get to that point, when we begin to look at what's available out there, and which you will help us, by the way, evaluating or interviewing, and if we don't find a good option out there for us, then we'll look into the other options and see what we can get.
Ms. Kaufman-Gomez.
This is such a specialty field of law with the kinds of contracts that are going on here. What do you think that we will be seeing out there in terms of the type of legal representation we're looking, how big is this pool of attorneys that would specialize in something like this that we would really be looking into?
Covering all 3 areas, it's unlikely that you can get one person that will be able to be the the right person to say, I can take care of all of it. Generally, the people that handle the CPUC, CEC, regulatory agencies in general, they specialize in that and they focus on that entirely. The folks that do municipal work, which is what Angela is doing for us right now, like to stay in that realm. And if they have a law firm, then, and you tell them that I want something related to, let's say, leasing an office, they will say, well, I'm going to tap into somebody that I know that will help you with that because that's not my specialty. And finally, the power supply contract negotiations, this is probably the most specialized area and probably the most expensive generally. Because you need to know about the law, but you also need to know a lot about energy, commodity exchanges and contracting, and that can be a bit expensive. So to the extent that we can find someone that will cover 2 of those 3 different areas, that would be great.
Friend?
And my concerns were kind of this, along the same line as knowing the complexity of what the task could be. That I support the in-house lawyer because I think there's a lot of benefits to having somebody that's part of the group all the time. But to find somebody that's even mildly expert in 2 of those forms is going to be a challenge. So I hope you keep your options open because there's going to be need for those experts out there. And there may be a law firm that offers all that. I don't know. But
yeah, I see there will be at a minimum of 6 months, if not more, time span between today, to the extent that you approve that we make that move, and the time we actually bring somebody on board. It will take a while, and it will take a long search, and I don't take it lightly, and neither should you. So we will take our time to make sure that we have the right arrangement. And if we don't, then we'll just lean back on the approach that we have right now.
Okay. Any other questions from board members?
No,
Ms. Brown?
No question, actually. I just was going to
Okay,
make a motion, but I think we need to ask the public if they...
I'll just
Yeah.
ask a
Yes,
quick question
Ms.
if I
Parker.
could. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just making sure that the action that we're taking today, the resolution we're adopting, obviously we're thinking that moving in this direction of general counsel is a good idea, but if it doesn't pan out, are you going to be able to proceed with other options without coming back to us to have us pass another resolution? I mean, are your options still open, or are you being constrained by the action we might take today?
Well, the action that you're going to take today, to the extent that you say you go ahead, you have the leverage to go out and hire a general counsel. If later on I can't find the general counsel, then I can always lean on the arrangement that we have right now, which is already in place. So I don't have to come back to you. Or if we decided to go to the county, for example, and that's still a contract, whether it's with the county or with Angela, it's a contract. So I still don't need any further action. It's just making sure that you are okay with the idea of bringing in a full-time legal counsel. That's the one that I need you to act on.
Okay. Any
Excuse me, I just wanted to clarify, there is not a resolution that is being adopted today.
Oh,
Perfect.
Okay.
true.
Any comments from the public? So we would, this is an action item to approve the replacement of the Monterey Bay Community Power Council contract position with a full-time employee position effective October 1st, but you'll be coming back to us, I know, to talk about.
Yeah, most likely, we probably will start to advertise in a month or 2. Then it will take at least, at a minimum, 4 to 5 months before we're ready to take on any action.
Yes, Ms. Brown?
I move approval of a full-time, the addition of a full-time general counsel.
And move, excuse
Should we find one? Should you find one?
Second.
Thank you.
And second by Kaufman Gomez. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered unanimously. Next, item number 18, adopt a resolution approving MBCP operating rules and regulations to serve as bylaws for Monterey Bay Community Power.
Hi. We're recommending that the board adopt operating rules and regulations. The purpose of these rules is to provide the basic operating procedures for the governance of the authority, to to resolve some of the uncertainty that was created by the dual nature of the authority's governance structure, and to address the rules that are typically found in the bylaws of a joint powers authority. When the JPA was first created, it was intended that the board would be adopting these sorts of rules to act as bylaws. The rules were drafted to align with the terms and the intent of the JPA. Key provisions of the rules include that it defines the respective roles of each board. It clarifies that the policy board has the authority to make all high-level decisions, and that the operations board is empowered to manage the details of those high-level decisions. It also provides for more formal communication between the policy board and the operations board through designating a board liaison that will be sent to each board's meetings and report on the actions of the other board. It establishes the board's right to create committees and sets forth the structure of the approved Citizen Advisory Committee and a new Audit and Finance Committee. If the board wants to establish an executive committee, that can also be added to the rules at a later time. It delegates the authority to the CEO to take action to support or oppose legislation that affects the authority, subject to certain criteria and the board chair's prior approval. Most of the other provisions cover general governance and legal housekeeping items, such as authority's obligation for reimbursement of board travel expenses and ethics trainings requirements, grounds and procedures for removal of board member as required by the JPA, the approval process for the authority's budget, annual meeting organizational matters, and the procedures for amending the rules and adding a member to the JPA. In regard to amending the rules, a simple majority vote of the policy board would be required. Adding a member to the authority would require a 2/3 vote. I looked at multiple other operating rules and regulations for other JPAs when I drafted these rules. These rules are fairly comprehensive. They're intended to provide guidance for enabling efficient governance. And if at any time the board desires, it can modify or add the rules subject to the majority vote requirement. So we're requesting that the board approve the rules as presented.
Okay. Comments from the board? Yes, Mr. Hoff.
I would like to thank the council and the executive director. I think this is a really good set of rules, and I think it's going to help us in the future in terms of the policy and operational board working better together.
You? Any other? Mr. McShane?
Yeah, I would echo Alan's comments. Curious about the executive committee, Angela. What were your thoughts there? I mean, obviously you put some heavy work into this and making sure that all I's were dotted and T's were crossed. Have you investigated or looked at ways that could play in? I know that there's other JPAs, the Air Resources Board that we've talked about. They have a budget nominating and personnel committee, which serves sort of like an exec committee. But what sort of structure have you considered?
I actually didn't. I didn't know that was going to be requested until it was raised in closed session today as something that should be talked about when we talked about this in open session. But I know Tom is familiar with having an executive committee that would be empowered to work on different projects that the board wants to have presented for the full board's vote later on. So to the extent that the board wants to create that sort of committee, it can be added to these rules as a standing committee.
Sure. Probably, I don't know if now's the time to do that. I mean, maybe we need to look at the potential for different structures and such. Yeah. I know we talked at one point about certainly an ad hoc committee could be put together by the chair and help to vet different things. But I think that with the number of boards and with as much as going on, that may not be a bad consideration. That's just some feedback.
Yeah. Any other comments? Comments from the public?
Mr. Chair, I did have one more comment
yes.
that just Steve's thoughts kind of triggered. So maybe it would be helpful, I don't think this is the time maybe to deal with the executive committee, but I think at a future meeting, it would be helpful for me to see some other examples of JPAs of I think, what are the duties sort of laid out for them? And I think it would be helpful for us to see some of those other examples when we have that conversation.
Okay, would you want that to be with power companies or the committee?
I think both power companies, but also maybe some of the other regional JPAs that we have. in the Tri-County area.
Okay.
If you wish, I can speak very quickly of that, because I did have an executive committee at the Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and 2 or 3 other joint action agencies that I worked with back in my municipal utilities days also had executive committee. The one that we had at Silicon Valley Clean Energy did target any in-depth area that the board wanted to get into, but they just didn't have the time to get into it during the meetings, so they delegated that to the executive committee. The setup that I'm more accustomed to with the other joint action agencies for munis that have been established a long time ago, they tend to focus only on things that need to be addressed in closed session, i.e. Labor issues, contract with the CEO, and as well as any litigation that the agency have to deal with. And sometimes they get into more detailed issues, but the focus tend to be for the executive committee on these things that generally are discussed in closed session. And the approach that they usually do is they get together 1 hour before the scheduled meeting, they hold their meeting, and then they go from the executive committee meeting straight into the general meeting.
Mr. Friend?
I just have a question, too. I think because we're just getting started, I think the flexibility of having the chairman able to appoint ad hoc committees, knowing the circumstances and knowing the areas where it might be better to, maybe the ad hoc committee for one problem is going to be different from another one. And I think if you have a set executive board, then you kind of lose some of the expertise that may be available on the board. And I think the chairman can use that flexibility and get the best teams, small teams together to tackle those little issues. And I think because we're just a startup, that might be the best way to go for right now. I've worked with a few executive committees before, and they get kind of locked into, most of the time their meeting is an hour before the regular meeting, and they don't have anything to discuss. Where if you have an ad hoc committee that will meet separately under the direction of the chairman, then they know exactly what they're focused on. So just another way to look at it.
Yeah, I would say for now that's the way we should do it. I certainly would welcome Mr. Hibashi's ideas, and perhaps at a later time we can take a look at that. Maybe even next meeting if you've got a good way to. But we've got them before us. This is a great document, and I think there's interest there. And certainly as we're only meeting 3-4 times a year as a policy board, it probably will take some additional meetings in that respect.
I was going to say, if you don't mind, I'll proceed perhaps in the September meeting to put a staff report together to kind of say, here's all the agencies that I know of, and here are the ones that do have an executive committee, and this is the function of that executive committee. And then to the extent that you decide to proceed with an executive committee, then we can bring that to you in the December meeting.
That
works.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, we can. Ms. Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I think a discussion about the executive committee with a number of examples would be a good idea. I would be leery of an executive committee that really took away too much of the deliberative power of this board. This is a community power organization, so I think it's very important that the full board be the full authority. So I think the model of some of the executive committees that, they help to set the agenda. They have maybe some more in-depth discussion. They might see the budget first and make a recommendation, but that the full board be the ones that really deal with the policy items without giving too very much of that authority and discretion to a subcommittee.
I agree. Any other comments?
I'll move approval then of the item.
Proposed, okay. It's been moved and seconded.
Public
Any
comment?
Comments from the public? Thank you.
That we did too.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So ordered. Now we have to appoint a Community Advisory Council members and consider recommendations of ad hoc committee composed of Chair McPherson and Directors Parker and Musner. This is an action item. I don't know, Ms. Park, did you have any comments, or do you want to make any comments about it?
Well, first I would like to thank all of the people who applied and expressed interest. We really had a rich selection pool, and it was kind of challenging to figure out how to get the right mix of representation, gender, geographic, constituent, all the different things. And I would say that we had a very good discussion. The staff did a lot of work in pulling all of the information together and really advising us of, on some of the candidates that maybe we didn't know as well. They had done some separate research. I feel comfortable. I was advocating for some other people, and, the arm wrestling happened. So I feel comfortable with this group. I think it will be important for the council to meet, to set up its bylaws, to really talk about the scope of the work. I think we're very interested in this truly being a community advisory council, to really look at the broad scope of issues that are part of the decision-making in terms of what energy and what mix and where we get it, and various kinds of conditions. The formation of a CCE really gives us some options to have input and to think very broadly and in a very visionary way about who we want to be and how we want to purchase our power, and so on. So I think having the Community Advisory Committee be our, really our place where a lot of those issues get vetted and discussed will be incredibly valuable to us. So I would encourage, if there are some recommendations for switching out some of our candidates, I'm quite open to that. We did try to, mix it up a little bit. And I think allowing this group, or whatever group we finally decide on, to, set the bylaws, get started, see how it's going. Some of the
that was very encouraged to see 62 applications for 11 positions. We know we have a very interested, shall we say, community, and this community advisory council is going to be very important to us as we move along, and it's really one of the things that's going to help us be as transparent as possible. And we really appreciate each and every person who made the application to be a member of this committee. And I was really impressed by the quality of it, too. So I just want to say thank you for everybody who, it wasn't an easy choice. We just had to, but we got through it pretty well, I thought. And I really do think that we have a tremendous set of qualified persons here on this 11-member recommendation. Any other comments? Jerry?
Questions?
Oh, excuse me.
I have a quick comment because I have to go, and so I can't actually vote on this because it's not going to happen. Our city council is having budget hearings, and I'm really late. But I just want to say I really appreciate the work that you all did, and I really appreciate the community interest in this. And if I could vote, I would be supportive of the slate that you all have established, and I look forward to working with you all. Sorry, gotta go.
Yeah. Good luck.
City business budgets, yes. Mr. Munzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too would just like to echo the comments that have already been made and thank all the members of the community that did apply for this committee, and also ask you, if you're not selected for the committee, stay involved. We appreciate hearing from you. We appreciate you wanting to work with us, and that, as the chair said, is very important to us, and we want to have that engagement with the community as we go forward. I also want to thank staff for all their hard work in trying to go through the 62 applicants, all 3 counties, because not one of us could do that, because we didn't know the people from the other counties, and staff kind of worked through that for us, and I want to thank them very much for that.
That is not to be left unsaid. It was tremendous, the amount of background work that was given to us so we can go through this application process. Mr. McShane?
Sure. Just a question on the topic of alternates. I'm a party to different organizations where oftentimes you don't have a quorum. So has any thought been given to alternates, or, should someone fall off, for some reason they can't continue to commit? My understanding is that this group has got its work cut out for it. When I talked to Mr. Hibashi, at one point, it sounded like they were going to meet daily. If not weekly, right? I mean, there's a lot of work. This is going to be a big commitment, Norm.
Well, I just want to put that group hopefully to rest and let them know that it's not going to be either weekly or daily. It will be monthly. And generally, I'm familiar with the advisory boards, and they tend not to have backups, because backups usually make sense when you have a board that represents certain members of an agency, and therefore you always want that member to be represented either by the primary representative or by the backup representative. In the case of an advisory board, those folks don't represent a specific member, they just represent themselves, and they come to advise us. And my experience has been really, for all the meetings, those folks tend to show up. Yeah.
Do you expect the public to show up to these meetings as well?
From my experience, that in the city of Palo Alto, the public did show up. In the city of Roseville, probably not as much. And so a lot of times it has to do with the topic being discussed.
Okay.
Yes, Ms. Kaufman-Gomez.
Thank you. In going through the 62 applicants in the packet that we've received, just to summarize, we have the agricultural industry represented here. We have water. Monterey Bay Aquarium is another representative, which is probably one of our larger accounts here. We have the union representation that's here. We have a broad, diverse scope of people represented here, and it was almost to even some of the ones that didn't make it. I hope that they still stay in tune, because we still will be very interested in hearing some of their input, because we have PhDs that we don't have the room for this particular advisory committee. So it's a well-stacked group of people here from all different scopes that will have some interest. The one little one that I felt that I was hoping for a little bit more on is somebody that was really drilled down in the transportation component. And since we do have some of these rotating, we're hoping that we'll see a little bit more come from an interested applicant that can really bring a lot of knowledge to the table in terms of transportation, since that's a pretty big one for us to look at for projects.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Friend.
I just have a few comments. First of all, is thank you for not putting me on this committee. Because I want to tell everybody, when I saw that list and went through those applications, I could not believe the task that you had. Like you say, there was PhDs in there, there was union representatives, there was agricultural, there was worldwide knowledge being brought into the table. I mean, it was just amazing when I saw those resumes, what kind of task you guys had to go through to sort through and come up with these numbers. I think it's amazing that many people were interested in becoming part of this board. I know a lot of them have agendas because of where they're coming from, but I think it's just amazing that you came up with this group of people. And like you say, I don't like alternates, but I do hope that those people become available, because some of these are one-year terms. And we may be next summer looking to replace 3 or 4 people. Of these 64 people, if they're still available, they're going to be excellent replacements. So it's a tough decision. I want to applaud you for making that.
Any other comments from the board? Well, I'd like to make notice that Mr. Delgado from Marina is here. Mr. Delgado?
Thank you. Sorry I was late. I had another board meeting this morning, but I wanted to say that to the people that applied, thank you very much. And we would not be in this room if it was people like you that didn't get this organization going, and we wouldn't have an advisory council if it wasn't for you. And so the comments made by my colleagues, the 62 people, I hope that all 50 that were not selected continue to support the 12 that were, the 11 that were, and us here, because I think that other things are going to happen only because of your support and your advocacy. And I appreciate the process. It seems like it was fair. It came to good result. So thank you to the 3 people who stood up to be on that committee. And I look forward to attending some of the advisory council meetings myself, because I'm excited about the support shown to this organization by this community that's going to be representing us on the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments from the board? Yes, Mr. Hoffman.
I also want to echo everyone's comments. Exact same reaction. Totally impressed by the depth of experience and the breadth of experience of folks who applied. And I want to thank you all. And those who are not recommended or who are not going to be approved at this time, please do stay involved, because your input is needed. And to the committee, thank you. You had a difficult task, and I think although there were some individuals I would have liked to have seen here, I understand the challenge that you faced, and I think that this is a representative board or a representative committee, and I thank you for that work.
Thank you.
Perhaps after public comment, if any of the applicants after the vote are here, we can, because we don't all know who you would be, if they happen to be here, if they can at least let us know who they are.
We'll have comments from the public, and then go to a vote and then ask. Are there any comments from the public on this issue?
Hello, everyone. Brennan Jensen, Monterey Bay Regional Climate Action Compact, and I just want to echo the appreciation and gratitude that's been expressed by many of the policy board members on the process that has been undertaken to seat this new advisory committee. We're really pleased with the formation of the Community Advisory Committee and with staff's responsiveness in hearing this request and forming the body. So I know it was a very tough decision. We're pleased that there were so many applicants, and it's really a testament to our community, the quality of our community members, that so many folks want to stay engaged. And so I also appreciate that folks are hearing that call to continue to engage those other members that may have not been selected but may still have some valuable contributions. So just want to say thanks.
Robert Frischmuth, Communities for Sustainable Monterey County. And I would just like to echo what Brennan just said. I pretty much agree with everything she said. And I think that the way the community was engaged in actually influencing how this committee is constituted, I think is wonderful. And I'm happy to see that it's, I went through every one of the resumes, the people that were recommended, and I can't make any faults with it. I think it was, I think it's an excellent committee. And I also think that it'd be nice to work out a way for smaller groups, advisory groups, subgroups of this committee would work to help bring more information into it. I mean, as long as other groups, I think, as long as they don't have any more than, I guess, 2 CAC members in it, would comply with Brown Act, and so some of the issues could be discussed in much more detail outside of formal CAC meetings, and that information brought in. So, kind of like a dendritic pattern going through the communities in different areas and different groups contributing to it. So I look forward to a great future.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Anna Olivia Eldred. I am chair of the CAC for East Bay Community Energy, and I wanted to congratulate you on 62 applicants, on staff that is really engaged and did reach out to us. I'm really impressed with the process that's happening here. You have an incredible community, and this month will be 1 year that our CAC has been seated. In that time, we have had an incredible learning curve, and we are really willing to share that learning curve with y'all. When our community has the opportunity to work with our staff, and staff has the opportunity to really hear from our community, what we come up with is stronger and better, and the programs that we are developing are phenomenal. We just came from a conference in Sacramento. We're being brought around to talk to all these new CCAs that are forming, because the programs are really innovative and they are designed to match the needs of our quite diverse community. Some of our cities are only 1 square mile, some of them are massive, and so really looking at a way to tailor the needs of small cities and small communities and more affluent or larger communities, and being able to do that with the input from our community is phenomenal. On my day job, I work for the California Nurses Association. We have almost 3,000 nurses in this service territory. We are here and dedicated to the health and strength of this program because the public health impacts of this are phenomenal. So congratulations. We are here as a resource. We are grateful to the leadership every one of you is showing, and congratulations to the community for being this engaged. On a side note, this month, we are voting to bring in alternates, but not as individuals, because we did have a quorum issue. Somebody moved, there was a conflict of interest, and somebody developed a illness. And so we're addressing that problem by having a pool of 3 that attend the meetings, but they are just a pool of alternates for our whole committee, so that they can step in representing other voices. It's not like an individual. It's representing more voices in our communities, so we're also happy to work with alternate models of alternates and things like that. So congratulations.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Yes, sir.
Chair McPherson, members of the board, Benjamin Eichert. I'm the director of the Romero Institute's Green Power Project. And just wanted to briefly say thank you very much. We're really excited that this committee is about to be seated, and just want to thank all the work of the staff, as well as the members of the board who went through the process of soliciting these applications and going through them and making these recommendations for this council. And I can definitely say that, though I am not, nor anyone from our organization is on the committee, we are going to continue to be very engaged with Monterey Bay Community Power and going to continue to provide as much support as possible. Thanks very much.
Thank you, and thank you to the Romero Institute and the formation of Monterey Bay Community Power. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Leslie Austin. I am with the Aromas Progressive Action League, and I also do some independent contract work for Green Power. As a member of the Aromas community, I'd also like to thank you all for your participation in this process. I think that this is such a tremendous model for shared leadership. The idea that this organization has expanded its reach into the community is really phenomenal. It's very courageous, and I'm really excited about it. I have learned more in participating in these board meetings and listening to you all deliberate and process this than I do in most board meetings I attend, and I attend a lot of them. So thank you all for your willingness to share the leadership with the community, for being engaged, and I'm also very grateful to all the folks who applied as well. I mean, 60-plus applications of really highly qualified people. Amazing, amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please come up if you want to speak next, get in line.
Good morning, Chairperson and board members. I'm Bruce Van Allen. I also consult with the Romero Institute Green Power Project, and want to add my compliments to the staff and the board committee and everyone and all the applicants. And I also just want to take the opportunity to point out that the first two speakers who thanked you for this work were also themselves applicants who are not nominated, and yet you heard from them that they are committed to staying here. And I just want to appreciate Robert and Brennan for their commitment. I think that's a sign of this is going the right way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Horacio, and I work with the San Gerardo Co-op. I was one of the applicants that was selected. Thank you. I hope I can be support on anything, and also hope that we can do the best for the residents of San Benito, Santa Cruz, and Monterey, and hopefully we can take care of our planet and have better air, soil, water, and everything that we depend for our lives, and everything that our children depend. So hopefully I can be of service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin Dayton, resident of Monterey, representing Clear Honest Options and Clean Energy. I was an applicant for the council and was not selected. But I looked it over, and I thought that overall you have a good balance of people with a lot of different perspectives. I think that actually your advisory council is a lot more balanced and objective than many of the other community choice aggregation councils, especially in the Bay Area, where they're heavily ideological, I would say. And I think this is a good group that's going to look objectively at things and not come in with hardcore agendas. I am going to be attending the meetings as an audience member, which perhaps might be the most appropriate role for me in this with this agency for oversight in the first place anyway. But I think you did a good job. The application pool was truly outstanding. What a great group of people you had apply for this. And that was good because, you know, this is a very technical, difficult subject to deal with. And I still believe that most members of the public really have no clue that it's going on. So to get this group of people to oversee it, that's a good sign that there's going to be oversight and monitoring of an agency that the public isn't really aware of. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other member from the audience who would like to contact or address us? I'd also like to mention that I, along with Mr. Hibashi, was up at a 2-day energy symposium, and it was a tremendous organization. And I'll tell you, Monterey Bay Community Power, it's known as a vibrant, very, not intense, but very, people are interested in what we're doing here as the first tri-county agency of its type at inception, having the policy board, the operations board, and one thing that we really want to emphasize is this community council. So it's going to be invaluable to us, and as it was said by everybody else, for the 62 other, or the 51 others, aside from the 11 that were appointed, please stay engaged. I'm pretty sure you will, and I hope more, and we know we have a very strong involvement from the community, and we want to hear your voice. With that, I'll just open it to a motion to accept the nominations.
I'll second.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if you would allow me,
excuse me.
before the vote, just I want to acknowledge the the hard work that Beth Trincard have put into.
Thank you. Yeah, there she is, back there, right there. I'm telling you, it was this thick. It was
Incredible work, 3 months worth
Thank you,
of just
Beth.
extensive work, so.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, we do have, yes.
Mr. Chair, if I could just comment, I want to say how much I appreciate the comments of the public, and I think that as the advisory council puts together its bylaws, some of the issues of what happens when members have changes in their lives, how many meetings before you're no longer a member, or do you want to, and a replacement needs to be brought forward, and what the process is for that. Also, the alternates pool is a concept, but you can work that out in your bylaws, so I look forward to seeing what creative solutions you come up with. And I also like the idea of working subgroups, because there will be a plethora of issues and topics to explore, and so a lot of work, committee work essentially, can get done between the regularly scheduled meetings by groups of 3 or 4 or 5, I think you could get away with, and still conform with the Brown Act. So again, really appreciate the willingness too of people who applied who couldn't be selected. Your willingness to continue to participate, that is going to make the conversation and the recommendations as rich and practical as possible. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, before we take the vote, I also like to make the comment that the breakdown of this council is kind of the same as the breakdown of this board, the 5-4-2. And I believe there was bloodshed over how many each county representation had.
I'll trade you so-and-so if you'll.
What's that?
Just the horse trading.
Right.
I'll let you have so-and-so if you let me have.
So,
right.
and I believe every representative that is being suggested for this council is living in their county. When we were talking as a committee, we said, well, if he works in the committee, does that count for, or works in the county, does that count for being part of the county? And I think we ended up with everybody lives in the county that they are representing. And I think that needs to be followed up on in the bylaws, that the 5 members of Monterey County needs to live in the Monterey County. The 4 from Santa Cruz need to live in the, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that needs to be followed up on the bylaws. And again, the alternate, the committee can work that out and all those other details. But I think we've got a good first step in going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So ordered unanimously. And thank you again, everyone. Thank you. Now we have an update of the policy board on the progress of the 15-year renewable power purchase and sale agreement for wind power with Durham Mesa.
Good morning, directors. My name is Jeremy Clark. I'm the energy trading manager for Monterey Bay Community Power. I just wanted to come in front of you all today to give you an update on the 15-year power purchase agreement that we've been negotiating with Pattern Wind Company. It's for the Corona Wind Project in New Mexico. First, I will give you a little bit of background of why we're considering this project and the other ones we've considered. In 2016, SB 350 was passed and basically required load-serving entities to acquire 65% of their renewable portfolio standards through 10-year term PPAs. So in order to meet those requirements, last fall, Monterey Bay Community Power and Silicon Valley Clean Energy did a joint RFO and solicited many different developers. And we had 87 responses with, 49 unique projects. And from that, 3 were shortlisted. And we're in current negotiations with all 3 of the shortlisted developers. But the one that we have progressed furthest with is the Pattern wind project, Corona in New Mexico. And it's a 200 megawatt project. Monterey Bay's percentage would be 90 megawatts of the 200 megawatt capacity. So today I'm just here to inform the policy board that we're in final negotiations with Pattern. We expect to have an executable agreement that we'll take to the operations board at the June 27th meeting. And that's what I have to report today.
Good. And I see in the staff report that this will allow MBCP to meet up to 46% of Senate Bill 350. So that's significant and
Yes, it
be really, really important for us. Any comments from the board? Yes, sir, Mr. Delgado.
Yes, I feel disappointment because there were 49 projects. Most of the 87 projects were located in California, and yet our first project out of the gate is in New Mexico. So I understand this is only one, but it's my hope, it's always been my hope that we would encourage development of new facilities as locally as possible. And to me, this is not a first step in that direction, but maybe there's justification for it.
Two justifications. The other two developments, by the way, that we are working on, both of them are in California. Those are the solar plus storage. We wanted to make sure that we have wind and storage in that combination of resources that we wanted to buy because they do complement each other. If we get them all to be storage, then we have the issue of all the powers coming during the day, nothing during the off-peak hours, and that creates problems for the California. So having that one for the wind, we couldn't find a whole lot of it here in California because all the wind farms are pretty much spoken for, and the state is not allowing new areas to be to put wind on it for a variety of reasons. Most of them are environmental. So most of the wind being developed is developed outside of California. So that's one reason. Second reason, which is even more important, because the project is located in New Mexico, their wind blows 2 hours ahead of our hours. So instead of happening at the same time as the solar generation, it does happen a couple of hours later in the day. So when the sun is coming down and the solar is ramping down, that project is going to start kicking up and reaching its maximum delivery. So it's a good complement because of the geographical location of it. So that's the reason, but again, that's balanced with another 300 megawatt of solar plus storage. Actually, it's 300 megawatt of solar, 90 megawatt of storage that we are currently negotiating. It's just happened that the negotiations are delayed a little longer for these projects, primarily because we are asking for storage to go with it, which adds a little bit more complexity to the negotiations. But these negotiations are coming through, and most likely sometime in July or August we'll be done with them.
Okay, and Tom, in the future, how do you see the advisory council's role? Would it include considering our philosophy and our goals and balancing those with the specifics of the type that you've just mentioned, the practical specifics and our broader philosophical objectives? Is there a place for the advisory council in that process?
Of course, everything that you have approved, by the way, in terms of policy, there's a number of policies that you have approved in the last several months, and one of them was the power supply mix. That was approved actually as in one of the meetings that we had, and you've approved at least for the first year of operation that we're going to go with the 30-70, 30 being renewable resources that are located right here in California or can dynamically be scheduled into California, that we're not going to be doing type 2 or type 3 renewables. And he also approved the other 70% be large hydro, so we can reach 100% carbon free. That was good for the first year of operation. When the advisory board comes in and when they're ready, we'll go back to them before we come back to you eventually with here's the number of other ways that we can mix our resources. This is what the cost is going to be involved in each one of those cases. Get their input hopefully their approval, then come back to you with that, a new policy basically to address future years.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kaufman Gomez.
Yes, the couple of California projects that you mentioned, are they looking at the same roll-up timeline as the New Mexico project would? Because New Mexico's 2020 through 2035, are we talking about the same time frame here?
Yeah, because our obligation to SB 350 kicks in 2021, so we pretty much put that deadline for all of them. I'll be fairly honest with you. I don't think they're all going to be able to deliver then, but we also have provisions in the agreement that says to the extent that you are delayed on delivery, then you're going to fill the gap with resources that are similar in price and in type. This way, we are not in conflict with the requirements that we need to have in accordance to SB 350.
Okay. Any other comments? Mr. Delgado.
Long ago in the 90s, I had experience with wind farms in the Palm Springs area, and there was a lot of scamming and a lot of going out of business. If any of our partners go basically belly up and don't produce, how does that affect our liability and our responsibility to find the energy?
When you say our partners, you mean the developers that we're signing contracts with?
Yes.
Actually, the contract is quite extensive, and it does cover a lot of these issues. Basically, when we sign the contract with them, they have to post a bunch of money, somewhere around $5-6 million. And I don't recall the exact amount, but it's roughly around that time. Then as they move forward towards completion, and 1 year before actual completion and delivery, they have to post an equal amount of money. And to the extent that they go belly up or don't deliver, then we end up taking that money. Now we have to scramble to try to figure out a way to get a resource in place, but at least we are guaranteed that they will deliver, otherwise they'll end up losing quite a bit of money.
And the other 7 or 8 CCAs, have they had any issues with this sort of problem?
Not that I know of.
That's good news. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Any questions from anybody in the audience? Okay, now this, we're completing the final agreement, so there's no action needed at this time, or do you want us to make an action to go ahead if?
I think that since we consider this to be more of an operation issue, we wanted to bring it to you for information, then we'll take it to the operations board at the end of the month for approval.
Very good. Okay, we'll just move on to the next item then. Well, board member reports or comments. Any comments from board members? Mr. McShane.
Yeah, I just want to remark on what a great job the organization's doing in getting our word out. Just the advertising, the community meetings, social media engagement, it's such an important part of what we're tasked with. So just compliments in that arena. I am anxious to do a meeting in Salinas, so just I have a couple dates pending, so hopefully that's on the radar someplace. Also,
let me know, and it will be on the radar.
I love it. I think the new meeting time's good as well. As to Garden Court, just a few thoughts. One, really make sure we've got lots and lots of signage. It was great to see like folks in safety vests directing traffic, being on the 3rd floor and in kind of an off the main drag location. I think that's important. And another thought I had, just given some of the other boards that I've sat on, it would be cool to have some flags like we see here behind the dais. And I think I raised that with Tom, and he said, well, it'd be up to us. So if everybody's comfortable with that, I think that'd be neat. It makes us look a little official, and slap the logo up there. And I'd even say I'd be one of the ones to add the Pledge of Allegiance to our agenda if the chair would be willing.
Well,
so
it's up to,
if everybody's okay with that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. Cool. All right. Look forward to seeing y'all in Monterey.
All right, any other board member comment? Yes, Ms. Parker.
Thank you. I want to express my appreciation. I understand that when it's time for the residential program to roll out, that there will be an option for 100% renewable. And I wanted to just ask 2 things. As a practical matter, how would one sign up for that? And then do we have a sense for what the price difference might be as compared to the basic plan?
I can answer the second question, and if Peter is here, I'll ask him to step up and answer the first one. The price is going to be 1 penny per kilowatt hour more than what the customer is paying today. As for the first, I believe it should be on the notification, but it's possible that the first set of notifications went out without having that being a choice. Peter? I was asking the other Peter. I'm sorry. We got way too many Peters. Mark? Oh, there you go.
Similarly to how someone would opt over to MB Green Plus or MB Share right now, we'll have the same options for choosing MB Prime. The one item that we may be a little slow to implement is the interactive voice recording, which is a more complicated procedure to make ready, but it'll be very similar to the other opt-over options.
Great, thank you. And that's through the website? I'm sorry, I'm sure I got my notification, and I'm so much in the habit of disposing of all excess paper into my recycling and just putting the bill next to my computer. I need to start looking for the pieces of paper in my bill. So could you just remind me what the process is?
Sure. So I don't believe MB Prime is included on the residential notifications at the moment. We really wanted to make sure that we had everything available by July 1st, which we're on track to hit. But I don't believe it was included in the notifications themselves. It'll be available on the website, and then I know we're planning on doing a significant amount of additional marketing outreach. But we also wanted to really think through making sure that it was clear that everyone really understood MB Choice and MB Prime, and then MB Green Plus and MB Share. Because as we've added a new power mix, we really wanted to just make sure it wasn't confusing for individuals in terms of what they were selecting. But so our call center will be able to move customers onto the MB Prime option. Staff is able to move customers onto the MB Prime option, and then it will be self-served through the website, and then eventually also through the IVR as well.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Mr. McShane?
Yeah, one other thing for Tom, because we're not going to see you for a few months. We don't have a meeting for a while, so just it might be worthy to, things are moving fast, to send like a Tom's update to us. I get cornered all the time and sometimes asked technical questions about Monterey Bay Community Power. I do pretty good on the fly. I send people to the website, but any updates as they come out, I think would be helpful, and even talking points, just so that we're ready.
Sure, glad to.
Cool. And I think the most important one is July 1st, when we're going to launch the residential part of our operation.
If I may ask, are we going to have a press conference like we did with
switch throwing?
Yeah, like a switch throwing?
I don't know.
I believe we have two different events are scheduled.
Okay, let's hear when they are.
And maybe either Shelley or
Sunday, too.
Oh, July 1st, yeah.
Hi. So yeah, July 1st will be the Clean Air Fair, first annual, right on the enrollment date for residents. And then we also have in Santa Cruz, July 14th, first annual Community Power Festival. So it won't be a flipping of the switch, but it will be a commemoration of residential launch on July 1st, downtown Monterey.
I think that brings up an excellent PR moment at KSBW or somebody just to walk in the office and Tom stand there with a big switch, just ready to go.
On June 29th.
Something we could do with the PR movement there.
Yeah, I'll talk to you about that, because I was talking about maybe doing an op-ed too. Just, we've done our first phase with commercial, industrial, and so forth. Now we're going to residential. But
if it can be hammed up, I'd love to be there too. It'd be great, whatever's appropriate.
Obviously, we'll notify all of you with ample time, hopefully, to make sure that you all attend if you can.
Okay. Other questions from the board? Okay, our next board meeting will be September 12th at 10:30 at our headquarters on Garden Court in Monterey, just by the Monterey Airport. This meeting is adjourned.